Greetings, everyone. I am Zelda, 28 years of age. Today, I wish to recount to you a tale from my personal life, an error that I will bear with me for the remainder of my days. It is a narrative about how I cherished my boyfriend, but inadvertently charmed his father, leading to the dissolution of their family. When I recognized my blunder, it was already too late. I do not relay this story in the hope of absolution, but merely aspire that through my account, those who find themselves in a comparable situation will awaken before it is too late. Do not tread in my path. Please accompany me in this story. I am Zelda, 28 years of age, residing in a tranquil suburb where everything appears to be enveloped in serenity and simplicity. The modest homes with crimson tiled roofs are tidily aligned, tucked among the verdant trees as if they have stood there for ages, witnessing the gradual evolution of life. Each morning, I awaken to the melodies of birds from the nest on the balcony. The morning sunbeams filter through the white drapes, casting soft lines of light on the bedroom wall. The aroma of coffee from the petite shop at the street's beginning often drifts in through the window like a familiar salutation to commence the new day. Here, everything appeared extraordinarily peaceful. The tree-lined avenues were vacant in the mornings, except for the occasional elderly gentleman strolling his dog. The laughter of children post-school blended with the sound of bicycles rolling on the gravel trail. Life proceeded like a slow, secure film, making it easy to believe that everything was flawless. But it was not. Behind all that tranquility, I concealed a secret that pained my heart each time I pondered it. A secret I never possessed the bravery to confess, even to myself. The life I was leading, this portrait of peace, was merely a facade masking the turmoil and devastation I had instigated. But beneath the disguise of an ordinary woman lay a truth so disgraceful that I never dared to utter it. I knew that if that secret were unveiled, my entire life would be demolished, just as I had demolished the lives of others. It all commenced when I accepted a position as an aide at the corporation of Mr. Edgar Lucas's father, my beau. It was a sizable enterprise where everything from the foyer to the conference room radiated opulence and professionalism. Initially, I felt somewhat overwhelmed working in a cutthroat milieu, but Lucas bolstered me greatly. He asserted this was a superb chance for me to cultivate my vocation, and I trusted him. Lucas is a steadfast and devoted man. He invariably materialized when I required him. From late evenings when I was fatigued post-work to instances when I wavered before momentous verdicts. But Lucas is exceedingly occupied. His occupation perpetually consumes all his time. Prolonged conferences, interminable business excursions that occasionally afford us only moments to gaze at one another through the phone display. In juxtaposition to Lucas, his father Edgar is an individual who invariably commands a formidable presence. At the age of 50, he possesses a striking visage with a lofty stature, immaculate silver hair, and the mien of a veteran, refined gentleman. From his manner of conducting assemblies, executing swift resolutions to his approach towards people, everything renders him the focal point of everyone in the firm. Initially, our dialogues were merely casual chatter. He would praise me on trivial particulars, occasionally the manner in which I had organized my papers meticulously, at times the attire I had selected for a crucial gathering. These compliments were innocuous and entirely benign, yet they evoked an inexplicable sentiment within me. As time elapsed, I discerned that the exchanges between Edgar and I appeared to organically prolong. There were late afternoons when it was solely he and I in the bureau, and I discovered myself captivated by the anecdotes about his existence, his profession, and the experiences he imparted. He was not merely a proficient entrepreneur, but also a man who understood how to heed and imbue the other individual with a sense of significance. I did not ponder excessively about the gazes he bestowed upon me at times. They lingered more than requisite, but I reassured myself that it was merely his manner of scrutinizing those around him. Nevertheless, there was one aspect I could not refute. Mr. Edgar's presence invariably instilled within me an indescribable yet potent awareness. It was late that night when everyone in the workplace had departed. The faint lights from the hallways fashioned an uncannily silent atmosphere. I seated myself to sort the papers post-meeting, attempting to conclude my tasks before exiting. The clock on the wall ticked consistently, and I solely concentrated on the sheets before me, not noticing anyone else in the chamber. When I glanced up, Mr. Edgar was standing there directly in front of my workstation. His abrupt appearance alarmed me. His gaze was profound and peculiar, something I couldn't clarify. He advanced closer, the space between us now merely a few paces. "You haven't returned yet." His tone was gentle, blended with a hint of weariness after an extended day. I grinned back, striving to maintain my voice nonchalant. "Indeed, I'm merely tidying some documents to ready for tomorrow." I bent to organize the files, but the sensation that he was still standing there observing me rendered me incapable of focusing. When I lifted my head again, his eyes encountered mine. It wasn't just the gaze of a supervisor regarding an employee, but appeared to hold something more profound, challenging to label. Before I could ponder or respond, he approached, circled the desk, and unexpectedly grasped my hand. I could sense the warmth of his hand, the vigor in his hold as if he feared I would depart. "Edgar." I faltered his name, but my voice was frail, incapable of anything but quivering. Before I could utter more, he inclined and placed a kiss on my lips. Everything appeared to halt. The sensation was both unanticipated and overpowering, as if all my logic had been swept away. I remained motionless, my heart racing in my chest, my mind vacant. The liaison between Edgar and I commenced as a concealed agreement that we both consented would never be disclosed. The lingering gazes in the workplace, the ostensibly innocuous transient dialogues steadily transformed into clandestine encounters beyond working hours. During the day, I existed in what many would deem an ideal life. I presented myself to Lucas, my partner, as the epitome of a devoted lover. We attended gatherings together where I was always pleased to present him as an exceptional individual, and occasionally discussed our future together. Lucas enjoyed elaborating on his long-term aspirations, a more spacious residence, a holiday, and the family he visualized us establishing. In those instances, I attempted to convince myself that this was a life I ought to be experiencing, that I was the perfect companion Lucas had always deemed me to be. But as dusk descended, circumstances altered. I discarded the facade of flawlessness and ventured to Edgar's residence. It was a tranquil locale in the urban core, distant from any inquisitive eyes. The dwelling was elegantly adorned, mirroring his opulent preference. The wall paintings, the delicate illumination from the table lights, and the fragrance of aromatic candles invariably formed a setting that was both inviting and alluring. When I was with him, I perceived the distinction. Edgar was unlike Lucas. He constantly underscored constancy and accountability. There was a potent allure of influence and knowledge in Edgar that I couldn't resist. In those moments, I recognized I was acting improperly, but the peril appeared to entice me further. Each evening when the residence entrance closed, we entered another realm where all regulations and duties were discarded. I didn't dare to reflect beyond those instants, didn't dare to confront the actuality that I was existing dual disparate lives. Everything erupted one ordinary afternoon when Lucas and I were seated in his lounge. I was engrossed in inspecting work papers, while Lucas was silently utilizing his mobile device. No one articulated anything, merely the steady ticking of the clock. But then the silence was disrupted when Lucas abruptly rose. He seized my phone, the device I had left on the table, and his eyes were fixed on the display. I instantly comprehended that something was amiss. Lucas's countenance gradually blanched, his lips compressed, and his hands quivered. "What is this, Zelda?" he inquired, his voice hushed but brimming with restraint. I stood, advanced towards him, but Lucas retreated, his eyes filled with letdown, staring directly at me. In his grasp were the communications between Edgar and me, brief lines but adequate to demolish everything. I couldn't express anything. My mouth was parched, my heart was pounding, and the words of contrition were lodged in my throat. Lucas didn't speak another word. He gazed at me one final time, his eyes like an icy blade piercing my spirit. Then he pivoted and exited the room, abandoning me standing there desolate and depleted. The entrance slammed shut behind him, and I felt as if my entire universe had crumbled. My heart plummeted, recognizing that in that instant I had lost him eternally. Several days later, Lucas and Edgar arrived to visit me. They appeared without notice, leaving me bewildered from the instant I saw them standing at the entrance. Lucas wore a frosty expression, and Edgar, who seldom displayed his emotions, now seemed anxious and perplexed. As they both stepped into the house, the ambience turned icy. Lucas positioned himself before me, his fists clenched, his voice quivering with fury. "Why, you are the individual I cherish and trust the most. How could you inflict this upon me and my family?" Each phrase he uttered felt like a dagger plunging straight into my heart. I yearned to respond, to defend myself, but I was incapable. I merely stood there mute, confronting his gaze brimming with anguish. Edgar attempted to interject, his tone hushed and somewhat contrite. "Lucas, hear me out. This was merely a moment of frailty." But Lucas wouldn't permit him to conclude. He turned to Edgar, his eyes ablaze with wrath and sorrow. "A moment of frailty? Do you comprehend that this not only shattered me, but also demolished our family?" The entire chamber plunged into a strained hush. I lowered my head, not daring to face anyone. As the tale disseminated, every aspect of my life began to disintegrate. Each murmur, each scornful glance was akin to a blade piercing deep into my self-worth. Acquaintances who once pledged unwavering support now steadily distanced themselves. They didn't need to articulate it, but their averted gazes ignored calls, and quiet departures upon my arrival conveyed their disdain. At the workplace, individuals refrained from openly censuring me, yet their silence was even more petrifying. I became the subject of everyone's hushed conversations. Colleagues who formerly shared laughter and banter now offered only frigid nods or feigned busyness when I sought assistance. Even those I presumed indifferent regarded me with critical eyes. Out in public, that estrangement did not diminish but intensified. Strangers who didn't even recognize me joined the chorus of condemnation. Their stares were like flames scorching away the self-esteem I once possessed. I lost not only cherished individuals, but also myself. From a self-assured woman striding confidently on her path, I was now merely a shadow, shunned by the values I once held dear. I subsisted in solitude, enveloped by ceaseless anguish. There are nights when I sit alone in the dim room pondering if I had been resilient enough to reject Edgar that day. Would circumstances have differed? Could I still be the Zelda of yesteryears, the one Lucas adored and trusted, the one with friends and colleagues who esteemed me? But the past is a shattered mirror. I can only gaze back at its jagged shards, powerless to alter or reconstruct a complete image. I do not pursue absolution, for I am aware I am undeserving. My blunders have wrecked not only my existence, but also the lives of those I once held dear. Yet, in moments of frailty, I still cling to the hope that one day I will learn to pardon myself. Pardon is not to disremember, but to discover tranquility within my soul, to no longer endure in agony. I aspire, however tenuous, to ascend from this debris and uncover a fresh trajectory, a path where I can subsist, not oblivious but anew.